Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What are your favorite paranormal movies? Do you learn from them or laugh at them? How do Hollywood and the indies, quote-unquote, have in store for us?
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the 146th broadcast of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and the second from our new Monday drive time evening slot here on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com here in the beautiful Blackstone Valley of New England. I'm Paul, and asking those incisive questions was my son and partner in the paranormal, Ben.
I know, I'm quite incisive.
Indeed.
But before we welcome tonight's guest, it's contest time, and last week's question was, in what U.S. state capitol building have at least 4 people died in freak accidents since the 1880s? Ghost relating, ? And answering correctly was Sue Demaris?
Demaris. Hey, you're from Woonsocket. You can't pronounce Demaris.
Demaris of Dearborn, Michigan. The answer was, of course, Michigan, and it apparently rather hazardous state house at Lansing. So this week's question is: what ghost is frequently seen in the
I'm sorry, I should have done the Komendantskaya Tower at the Kremlin.
Oh, all right. So
Russian lessons tonight when we get home.
Don't give me that. If you can handle that. Spasibo, Tavaric. If you can handle that, call us locally at 401-766-1240 or from anywhere in the U.S. at 800-449-1240. If I don't announce a winner during the show and you still think you have a shot, drop a line to me at ben@behindtheparanormal.com or Ben at behindtheparanormal.com, whatever. The winner gets an autographed copy of my dad's most popular book, Footsteps in the Attic.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why did you change mics? Suddenly Ben was talking to himself. Okay, now to our guest. We'll get organized here. Bob Wilkinson is a documentary director and producer carving out a unique voice within the genre. Having been inspired by Robert Rodriguez's book Rebel Without a Crew, Wilkinson set out to create films with a dramatic flair. Working through West Virginia Public Broadcasting, Wilkinson produced Rounding Third, a history of minor league baseball player Wyatt Powell. I should say a history of minor league Watt Powell Ballpark. John Brown's Body, a look at the lasting legacy of John Brown's raid in Harper's Ferry, and Homestead, a history of the Homestead movement in West Virginia. Shades of Grey, our first topic tonight, is Wilkinson's feature-length film focusing on the life of controversial UFO provocateur, you might call him, Gray Barker. Having garnered excellent reviews and awards, Shades is distributed by E1 Entertainment, Seminole Films domestically, and Trillion Entertainment, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, worldwide. It comes out on DVD this month. Currently, Bob is working on his latest film, Romeo Must Hang. If you see a bad performance of Shakespeare, I tend to agree. The piece that details the exploits of 1930 serial killer Harry Powers, the inspiration for the Hollywood classic Night of the Hunter. A graduate of West Virginia State College, Bob also participated in a prestigious documentary filmmaking workshop at WGBH, Boston's public television station, that many of us around here in New England watch.
So, Bob Wilkinson, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Very anxious to hear about your film. Ben, go ahead and give call-in numbers for those who are stuck in traffic around Boston, Worcester, and Providence tonight.
Okay. Nationally at 800-449-1240, or call us locally at 401-766-1240. So, Bob, tell us about Gray Barker and why you made Shades of Grey.
Gray Barker was one of the early pioneers in the UFO movement, and he wrote about some big events in his lifetime: the Braxton County Monster, the Mothman, the Men in Black, which is actually a term he coined in his first book that was published, and that's kind of his lasting legacy on the UFO field. His writing about the Men in Black and the subject of the government just kind of keeping an eye on you and looking if you know too much, watch out for that knock on your door.
Yeah, you think? Yeah.
It's
Well, I
one of
remember
those
that.
things.
I'm sorry, Ben. I don't know.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's all right.
I just wanted to mention that our show follows a great show, daily show here on ON by Joe Ferrier, who is a man of much interest. He is a tremendous talk show host, but in the 1960s he was well known as a UFO expert. And he knew Gray Barker, and I tried to get him to stay, and he wasn't able to. But it's too bad. We'd like to get Joe on at some point again. He has been a guest before, but he's a tremendous guest, and he knows a lot of this stuff. Now, Bob, I understand that Gray Barker was one of the people who almost was the first to write about the Men in Black.
Yeah. And there's been mentions of these mysterious people in writings in the past, but he was the first one to term it Men in Black. And his first book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, was about different people's accounts of the government, or these either beings or government agents coming to visit them and kind of frightening them out of the field. And most of this stemmed from his relationship with Al Bender, who claimed to have an experience himself, and attributed to him exiting the field on the Men in Black.
Okay. Ben's got a pretty good question here.
All right, so what's your opinion on Barker's work? Did he contribute anything to paranormal research, or did he just milk the subject for all it was worth?
No, I think he did contribute greatly. I think a lot. He has his detractors, because I think one side of Gray Barker, he's an entertainer, and I think he infused a lot of, I'll say, color to his writing, and but his legacy really is the stories with the Philadelphia Experiment, the Mothman, the Men in Black writing, and what he has done also is he with his style, I think he's encouraged others to get into the field. Timothy Green Beckley called in on a show that I was on earlier in the week, and attributed him getting into this as a career to Gray Barker. And so I think he did leave that impact on people. I don't know that he milked the subject per se, because he never really profited from it. So the only thing I guess he could have gotten out of it was the entertainment of being recognized as an expert in the field.
Did you know him? Because he was from West Virginia too.
He was from West Virginia. Unfortunately, no, I didn't get to talk to Gray Barker when I did this film.
And he died when?
He died in 1984.
1984. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us about the film? What incidents in Barker's life did you dramatize? I remember one time he faked a letter from the State Department to UFO contactee George Adamski, who was a big name in the 50s and 60s. And with things like that, did you dramatize the more controversial aspects?
Yeah. I cover. The film. Begins with his early work with the Braxton County Monster, up through the Philadelphia Experiment, and it does. We do talk about George Adamski, and what I tried to do in the film is give background on all these characters in the field. And when you get back, it's weird, because Gary Barker had contact with all these I'll call them main characters in the UFO circle, with George Adamski and folks like that. And him and Jim Mosley were well known for getting together and drinking a little too much and cooking up a letter and sending it out to see what kind of trouble they could get stirred up. and that actually got him into a lot of trouble.
Really? I can imagine that it did. All right. So tell us about the film, without giving too much away. First of all, when is it coming out on DVD?
This will be released tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, I know. We had ad spots on our CBS show last night about it. So, what? As much as you can tell us, where does it begin? Is it biographical or is it dramatized? I mean, how careful were you to be exact about the biographical details rather than dramatizing? I mean, or did you do both?
Well, this story, there's no narration. So I didn't go into the archives and find things and write out a narration. You mentioned you watch WGBH, they're like American Experience. They'll have a narration written out for the audience.
Yeah.
Almost like they're telling a story. But this story is told completely through Gray Barker's work, his writing, and people who knew him and knew the field. Jerome Clark is in it.
Oh, yeah, I know Jerry, yeah.
Stanton Friedman.
Oh, our good friend Stanton Friedman.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jim Moseley. Jim Moseley is, because Jim is probably the closest, other than family, that I found of Barker's. Jim Moseley is probably I would say Jim Moseley knows Barker better than anyone.
Yeah, we know of Jim. He's never been a guest, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Jim would be a great guest. I mean,
he's on the list.
What amazing story there. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'll have to get on to him and tell him to come on to the show.
Definitely, yeah. We had, we've been on the air for 2 years, and I thought, gee, we're going to run out of things to talk about. We never come close to running out of things to talk about. There's always something new and always somebody interesting to talk to. Ben's going to question.
And Jim would make a great story also. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with his book, Confessions of a Grave Robbing Ufologist. And, it details his time in Peru, digging up treasure and bringing it back and selling on the black market, and his adventures in the UFO field. It's a great historical outline.
He sounds like one crazy Renaissance man.
Indeed.
But what's your opinion of the paranormal? Have you ever had any experiences of your own?
I have not had any experience of my own. I would say that I'm open to the experience. I always believe that once you start saying that it's out of the realm of possibility, then you're probably going to cut yourself off to any experience that you could have. And I've been many places. I've been out in Dolly Sods with Bigfoot hunters, just to see what they do. I spent the night in Moundsville Prison just to check the place out. And here in West Virginia, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. We've been to West Virginia. I have on several occasions. No, we both have on several occasions.
Yeah, I've been there twice.
Actually, yeah, Ben's first trip was when I spoke at the Paranormal Conference in Parkersburg in 2003.
Yeah,
and it's kind of paranormal central. We have many guests. We talk about places all over the world, but somehow we always come back to West Virginia, which was not Mothman. It's Indrid Cold or somebody like that keeps bringing us back.
Gray Barker referred to it as the mini Bermuda Triangle.
I would say that's true. There seems to be a very active area, and of course, the basis of our work is not spirits and all this. It's a matter of, have you become aware yet that the paranormal is the background to all our lives and to everything because of the paranormal worlds theory that we happen to agree with, and that to us explains everything from Mothman to ghosts and everything else. Okay, let's. Why don't we move on and talk about? We'll come back to your film too, but we also wanted to turn this into a discussion of other films and paranormal media today, and see what your opinion might be. Now, I recently saw the movie Fourth Kind. Now, Ben hasn't seen that, but he might want to talk about other films. And that, have you seen that, Bob?
I started to watch it, but I have to tell you that it didn't catch me in that first 30 minutes.
A lot of people say that, yeah.
I went on. And to me, the movies are so long today. And, they're asking you to invest 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes of your life to sit there and watch this movie. So it's like, if you want me to do that, you better grab me quick.
Well, that's the thing, more than popcorn. As a professional journalist myself, I watched it. I did get through it. I watched it with interest. And the premise of the thing, and it stars, who was it, Mila Jovovich, who was in Fifth Element.
Yeah.
And it was very well acted, I thought, but it purported to be the dramatization of a true story. And throughout the film, as you saw from the beginning, they would have a split screen, and on one side would be Jovovich or somebody else who was acting, and then on the other side, the alleged real person whom they were portraying.
That sounds really kind of...
Well, I don't know. I think, I've seen it done worse, but you'd have... What they did was to mix alien abductions, because fourth kind being the experience that goes supposedly beyond Close Encounters of the Third Kind. First kind, correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob, first kind being seeing a flying saucer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Second kind, seeing one on the ground. Third kind, hobnobbing with aliens. Fourth kind, being messed with by aliens. I mean, is that more or less correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think third kind is contact, and then
Contact, right.
I believe the fourth kind is like actually possibly getting aboard.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So,
being abducted. Basically.
yeah. So anyway, that's how this film came out, and they had phenomena that are usually associated with possession, demonic possession, supposedly portrayed on these supposedly legitimate films that were accompanying the regular film, and all the business about Sumerian connections and some strange voice speaking in the Sumerian language. And it's when that voice came on that I said, wait a minute, something's fishy here, okay? Because I'm big on the interest, the paranormal interest of the Sumerian culture, the way it arose and what they did and the way they put things and what they believed in their religions. But this kind of started immediately to kind of get beyond all that, and I said, something's fishy here. And sure enough, if you check it out, you'll see that the actual footage of these the alleged sessions, sessions with hypnotism and the sessions with the psychiatrists cannot be verified in any way, and the people involved can't be verified either. So, but this seems to be the tone of modern paranormal films and TV shows. I mean, sort of drama rather than fact, I guess.
My voice cracked really bad. I am so sorry.
That's all right. It sounded more paranormal.
No, facts. That's what I meant to say. It's
okay. So what's your take on that, Bob? I mean, as someone who's sort of been involved in that, what do you think of the current state of paranormal films and paranormal entertainment, shall we call it today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in a way it's almost like they're trying to find a new niche, and I think you'll see the blending of genres. And you see, I mean, even with, there's kind of been it's not the first time it's been done, but you see the popularization of these mockumentaries, I'll call them.
Yeah.
Similar to Spinal Tap, and then you have, it really came back with The Mighty Wind and Best in Show, and that's the series that they were doing. I guess Christopher Guest did this. And I think the documentary field has become pretty popular lately, and you're seeing people and directors shoot their films in a documentary style to make it look like it's real. A Blair Witch was a good, that could have been the first paranormal one. District 9 was shot that way.
Yes, that's right.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
That was a really good movie. It was intense from the get-go, and it took you for a ride, and it didn't stop.
Yeah.
It was a really cool concept. I liked it.
Well, it's a ride.
Yeah.
Well, I love that idea. Instead of the aliens coming and bringing light and warmth,
it's more believable.
It is more believable,
because
especially when they start, stripping cars and doing black market,
causing riots, eating cat food. And it's just a good movie.
Yeah, it's very original. One appreciates originality in Hollywood these days.
District 9 is a very good movie.
Exactly. So, but getting into paranormal television, of course, we have the usual fare that's been going on for years now of the. Is it a ghost or is it not a ghost? And then assuming that ghosts are spirits and all the spiritualist stuff people just don't even question. That drives me nuts. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, it's become mainstream, the whole topic. And to be fair, I'll put a disclaimer out there. I don't watch much television. And so I'm not really familiar with a lot of the television shows, but I hear people talk about the different ghost hunter shows. There's I've noticed even a lot of, because friends will call me because I did a film about Gray Barker, and they'll say, hey, there's a show about Roswell, or there's a show about the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
But that more and more I notice that it's like these shows, rather than really suspense and trying to frighten you because of the situation, you get a lot more of the bump, and the cat runs out in front of you, and those kind of things that people play on. I remember when MTV Fear first came out. I think the first episode was at Moundsville Prison, and it was all based on scaring people by noises and things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so,
you know, well, I know that a primary part of the audience for a lot of these shows are teenage girls. Now I know we have some listen to our show too, so no offense, kids, but you know, if they're listening to this show, I like to think maybe they're trying to go a little deeper and think a little harder than the others prompt them to do.
Yeah,
but
and that's the important thing. I think the danger that you fall into with the paranormal is that when your idea becomes a religion almost, I think it becomes dangerous because you start to be unwilling to question what you see as the truth. And I think you need to constantly be in a state where you're willing to look at the hard questions rather than react to them and say, well, wait a minute, maybe I need to look into this. And, you know, you don't want to get too caught up into being the almost like the sucker, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny you should mention that because that came up last night on a CBS show. We were talking with Paul Devereux, an expert from England, on many things paranormal from an interesting point of view, from the point of view of earth energies and things of this kind, Avebury and the standing stones and what the ancients knew and how the ancients thought. And he, in one of his books, sort of demythologizes the whole idea of ley lines, L-E-Y lines, which, for those who are into that aspect of the paranormal, are energy lines that run across the earth almost like a net. Now, we find that sort of thing all the time, but they move, and they're not quite the same as the early English researchers described them as being when they started researching this. And ley lines are a part of the paranormal religion almost for true believers. You accept that like you accept reincarnation, or you accept it like you accept the idea that you know, when you see Grandma, you're seeing her ghost, et cetera, et cetera. And
even if she's still alive.
And we already have a couple of emails from people who were offended by Paul's non-belief in ley lines, and it's, you know, I mean, and just as you say, Bob, it's like, I guess, like a religion, and that's extremely dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is, and you know, you gotta, it's like, you know, I believe that you have to associate yourself with people who don't think like you, and you have to be willing to not have an argument about these things, but have a conversation where, you know, maybe it does question your beliefs, but you need to, you know, I think you really need to examine that, and if anything, it can only strengthen your belief.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt it. Unless it totally disproves it, and then, you know, you got to start again.
That's it. Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal here on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com. Stay with us.
New River Press is proud to sponsor tonight's segment of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benjamin Eno. New River Press offers the best in unusual New Age books. Stand by the side of tonight's host, Paul Eno, as he battles poltergeists and helps suffering souls and families in the critically acclaimed books Faces at the Window and Footsteps in the Attic. Plunge deeper into the paranormal with Paul and learn about his influence on human history, its action in our daily lives, and its ultimate meaning for us in the best-selling Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. Available now from New River Press, publishers of unusual books. Visit newriverpress.com, amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore. And set for release late this year in one of the most unusual books on the subject ever written, Paul gives us Dancing Past the Graveyard, What Ghosts Have to Say About God.
Okay, we are back Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, WOON 1240 AM, ONWorldwide.com. And our call-in numbers tonight, locally, 401-766-1240, and nationally, 401-449-1240. Okay, and call us. We're talking with Bob Wilkinson, director, producer of the new film Shades of Grey, about to be released tomorrow on DVD, about Gray Barker, the controversial and pioneering, nevertheless, UFO expert who has led a very interesting life, to say the least. And we've gotten from that, and we're talking about films and television and the paranormal genre and how good or bad they may be, whatever's going on. And so we're going to continue in that vein. And if anyone has any questions, of course, give us a call. Tell us about your favorite paranormal movies or TV shows, or what you don't like or do like about them. Ben and I are preparing, hopefully, to launch our own show at the behest of a rather well-known director. And we're going to see, we've got a couple of networks interested already, so that's good. And they haven't even started to market it yet, so fingers crossed. It'll be the first show, if and when it gets off the ground, to use the theories that we use. It's an entirely different approach to the paranormal. And I think people are going to see some things they never quite imagined before about this, because when you open your mind to the idea of other worlds, cosmic journeys, all kinds of interesting things can happen. So anyway, we'll see if we can bring that to you. All right. Now, I was going to ask, I guess, no, you had a question, I guess, Ben, for Bob about his own preferences.
So, what are your favorite paranormal movies, or movies with a paranormal theme, and why?
Other than ones you made yourself, let's be fair.
Yeah, well, Shades of Grey, of course.
Yeah.
But I'd have to go back to the old school stuff, like Poltergeist, The Exorcist, Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
And you know, those are the movies I grew up on as a kid. And that's why I think there's, you know, something missing in the movies today. Whether it be because I've grown up and they don't scare me as much, but you look back and those movies are truly frightening. And
well, I often blame the Exorcists for getting me thrown out of the seminary. It was a long story. That came out in 73 and 74. I had been doing this for several years while a student for the priesthood, under the radar, so to speak. But then the Bridgeport poltergeist outbreak of 74 occurred. I was working out with Ed and Lorraine Warren. Newspapers had the whole thing all over, and the church was paranoid because of this movie, The Exorcist. Instead of coming out and saying, "This is what we believe. Here's what it is. You know, this is what it means. This is what we do about it," they clammed up, and they expected me to do the same thing. And this was not the same kind of case, really, although it could have developed into something like that. It really created an atmosphere of paranoia in my world. And eventually, by 1977, they had enough of me. And people asked me, well, why did you choose the paranormal over the priesthood? Well, for one thing, looking back and seeing what's happened to the church, I think maybe the church and I both had a lucky escape. And secondly, I think that what is more important than questions about what is the ultimate destiny of the human race? What are we? Where are we going? Where have we come from? What is our soul? What does that mean? What are ghosts? Are they really what they appear? Questions that go on and on forever and have to do with our ultimate destiny.
Right.
And what is more important than that without the baggage of dogma, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think that's what when I talk about, when if you're a Bigfoot enthusiast or a UFO enthusiast or a ghost enthusiast, when it crosses over into that, I think that's what's dangerous. And religion is that way. I mean, I think it's safe to say that most religions don't allow room for that questioning of where that particular building or people stand on issues.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. In my book Turning Home, I point out what I believe is true, and that's that the paranormal is the mother of religion, and it's the mother of science. And the two siblings don't understand each other and don't get along very well in most cases. And it's a dysfunctional family in our minds, I think, today. But I'm afraid I've dragged you away from Ben's question, which was, what are your favorite paranormal? I know you mentioned those two. How about TV shows? I mean, are there any that you like?
I've never been a big TV person. So
yeah, no, neither am I. Yeah.
And so I've never really. When it comes to TV series, I watch some British comedies, and that's about the extent.
Oh, so do we, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Faulty Towers.
Father Ted. Well, that's Irish.
Well,
that's
I really like the new ones, like the IT Crowd and Britain USA, and those. I mean, the British humor is, that's more my speed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, very good. Okay, now we have live audience today, actually, in the studio. Do you have any questions for Bob? How about any opinions on your own favorite paranormal TV shows or movies? No, they're zipping, they're clamming up. The stage fright. Okay, well, all right, very good. Okay, Bob, we're going to have you back on CBS in a couple of weeks, and we'll look forward to that. And we'll if there's anything else you'd like to tell us again about the movie about Gray Barker, The Shades of Grey, and where people can get it, and anything. I'll give you the last word on that.
Yeah, well, if anyone's interested in Gray Barker, the film's coming out tomorrow. It's going to be available at Walmart, Blockbuster, Netflix, Target, Borders. So, I mean, basically, Amazon.com, it's there also. So anywhere where you probably do your DVD shopping, it's going to be there. Or you can, if you want, you can rent it, check it out, and on Netflix or Blockbuster.
Okay.
It's also going to be available for streaming on Netflix. But take a look at the website, theyknewtoomuch.com. There's a trailer up and some information about the Philadelphia Experiment, Men in Black, Braxton County Monster. And so you can see a little bit of that early pop culture developing here in the United States.
Very good. Okay. Well, we'll talk to you in a few weeks on CBS, and thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. Okay, we're going to get to a few emails here, and something we don't often have a chance to do. And some of these questions are very incisive and very interesting. This is one from Jake Gennaro in Detroit, the great WOMC.
Right. Hi, Paul. I'm a grad student in physics, and I am inspired by your paranormal theories. You go where my professors fear to tread. As a matter of fact, I can say that your books have changed my life for the better, and I love Ben's simple but deep approach. Why, thank you. I do have a little trouble grasping the idea of complete parallel lives being lived at the same time, and the idea of the consciousness shift at bodily death. Can you explain further?
25 words or less. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jake. I appreciate your kind words. So does Ben. Essentially, I approach this way. I think it helps to use metaphors. All right. I use frequently the metaphor of, let's say, the CD. Okay. On your CD are many, many tracks of songs, but you only hear one at a time. Our hearing and even our minds are not developed to the point where we could hear. If we heard all of them at the same time, it would just be a din.
Our heads would explode.
Yeah, or at least we wouldn't like what we heard anyway. I don't know if our heads would explode. Possibly. But I think that we are at the point in our evolution where you can say the same thing about multiple parallel lives. This comes from the idea in quantum physics of the multiple worlds theory. Okay, now this was cooked up by a graduate student named Elliot in the 1950s. And it kind of took parts of the scientific world by storm, and they said, aha, this explains this, this, and this, and this in the math. Okay, and what it essentially said was that there are many worlds in addition to our own. What you see is not what you get. Usually it's what you feel is what you get. We sometimes feel as though we're in the presence of someone else. We feel as though, I've had people say, gee, it's funny, I don't feel like I really belong here as part of this species even, or even on this planet. And I'll say, yeah, that's because you have many lives that are not on this planet, or in this world, or in this place or time. The fact is we share, just like the CD, one single wave or plate or track, whatever term you want to use that's not adequate, and we all share it. It's all one life. Or I use sometimes the metaphor of the holiday lights, the Christmas lights. You have one string of lights, you have different bulbs, but they get the same energy flowing through them all. Or a tree. You got millions of leaves, but one tree and one life. All right? So that when you die, quote unquote, something I don't believe in, even for the body, the leaf falls off or the bulb breaks or whatever, so what? The life doesn't go, it continues to flow. The individual doesn't really mean much. And I say that with all due respect, coming up on the 4th of July to Thomas Jefferson and the founders of our country, that the individual, when you get down to it, really doesn't exist. And we have made a complete pig's breakfast out of our society by believing that everything is based on the individual. Ben and I did a show on teen suicide not too long ago, and the paranormal implications of that, whether it's best to just do yourself in and hop to a better world where you already are. That's how this can be misused, this whole idea of simultaneous lives. And we decided, of course, and we said something that we believe very deeply, that no, you make your own bed in the multiverse, as it's called, in this this incredible, stupendous explosion of different worlds and different realities, all of which exist simultaneously. So that it's up to you to make it. This in a funny way kind of puts humanity back at the center of the multiverse, the center of the universe, from which Copernicus kind of took us, a number of years ago. So there are all sorts of implications to this, but as far as how to understand it, start by the analogies, start by the metaphors, and then start to realize, too, that this life is one big life. Your subconscious, everybody's always saying, well, the subconscious has all this, unused power, and well, sure it does. That's where your lives are being lived. I think in the subconscious, you are Thomas Jefferson. You are someone who died in a UFO crash 30,000 years from now. All possibilities, crazy as it may sound, that's what quantum physics seems to say in this particular interpretation, and that's what we find when we research the paranormal. And we go out on cases. We're not looking for ghosts. We're looking for people from other worlds. We contact people from other worlds. One of the cases we have to work on now is we're going to go out, and this is going to be, I assume, as far as we know, the first episode of our TV series is to go to Connecticut. And one of the things we have to do, along with dealing with ghosts and UFOs in the single case, is to go down in the basement of this farmhouse and to convince the great-grandmother and great-grandfather of the current residents, who of course physically are no longer with us, that the woman in the house is not a ghost haunting them. They seem to be terrified whenever she comes down the stairs because they can hear her, but they can't see her. And it's the same from her side of this membrane of these particular worlds. Nobody's dead here. There is no such thing. These people are living simultaneous lives, and where their consciousness happens to be right now is where this woman's coming down the stairs. How come our consciousness can't absorb all these lives we're living at once? Because we're not at that point in our evolution yet. Like the CD, if we were to hear it all at once, it would be nothing but a din. And people who do hear it all at once are unfortunately what we call schizophrenics. I don't think it may be in every case, but when I was a grad student working in psychiatric hospitals, these people were living in different worlds that were absolutely real. All you had to do was look into their eyes, and you knew it. And so did some of the doctors who didn't dare say it, because as they told me privately, they'd lose their jobs. Because this is beyond what our science, or alleged science, can accept. So this is our view of parallel lives. It's the first day of school for us, too, Jake. So write again if that hasn't been any kind of a help, but it's a start maybe to explain it. It's just we're not at the point where we can absorb them all yet, so it is kind of hard to understand.
That was really good.
Well, thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Now I know I keep you close. Anyway, okay, here's one from, on a different subject, I guess, from Marty L. right here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
And Marty writes to us, to the best of your knowledge, has anybody ever become sick with radiation poisoning or anything else because of contact with a flying saucer or alien? I think this would be great physical evidence.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Now, we are not UFO experts. However, we sure picking up a lot of knowledge from our guests.
Well, and, they have radiation burns.
They do. What was that case in Kansas? I can't quite remember the name. There was it was in the 60s. A lot of strange things happened in the 60s.
Well, it's because it was the 60s.
Yeah, the hippies were behind it all. Anyway, they landed in flying saucers. You see some falling out. Anyway, I'm being silly.
It's amazing what LSD does to you.
Yeah. In Kansas, I remember it started when there was the young man who lived in this farm family was out in a wooded area, and he saw this craft. And I guess what happened was his parents were going by. They saw it too, and it wasn't that big, but it was at a certain area on the ground, and then it was kind of up through the trees and then flew off. But on the ground, it left a circle of whitish material that was apparently highly radioactive, and he and his parents both became sick. To this day, I believe that researchers have found traces of this. It's been tested in laboratories, and I can't quite remember the details, but it was some element that I believe, removed the moisture from the soil and then had certain effects on human skin.
Yeah, something like that.
So nobody died or anything. Another example was in, matter of fact, Bill Burns, our friend Bill Burns from UFO Hunters had a show on this, and this involved a very strange incident by which people were driving down a road at night, and a very odd-looking craft that had fire coming out the bottom, and was kind of, you remember this one? Was kind of triangle-shaped.
Oh, yep.
Came over their car, accompanied by what appeared to be military helicopters. Now, of course, the whole Men in Black thing gets into black helicopters that don't seem to be connected with the government. That's another story. But this thing came over their car, burned the hood of the car and part of the windshield, and they themselves became very sick, and one or two of them died of cancer, I think, within a few years.
And there's also, this could be from, like, the nuclear testing in, like, the deserts, but near, like, in the towns, like, near Area 51, people have all have cancer.
That's true. Yeah, I saw that myself. I was down during that wonderful period in 2005 when I was down there, was being chased across the desert by a car with government plates on it, having done nothing. I don't know if I get into that again, but it convinced me something for sure is going on down there. I got to the town of Rachel, looking like a ghost myself, and I talked to several of the people. The town of Rachel has about, probably about 100 people in it. Many of them work at the base. That's all they'll say. And there's a wonderful little diner there called the Little Alien. And they have alien burgers. I don't know if they're made out of real aliens or not, but they have a little alien museum where I got you and your brother some shirts and things like that. And the woman said, "What happened to you?" I said, "I was just chased across the desert by this bloody SUV with U.S. government plates on it after this, and this happened." She said, "Oh, you were taking..." I had been up about 30 miles away taking pictures of a sign by the road, and there were some cars parked there, and she said they thought I was taking pictures of the cars with the plates because they worked at Area 51. That was the park and ride for Area 51. How am I supposed to know that? And the agents in this vehicle ran a check, she said, on my plate, which was a rented car, but I am apparently listed on a database of authors who write about the paranormal. Therefore, ka-ching, they put two and two together, and they chased me across the desert to tell me to stay away from those guys, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
She said, "Oh, don't worry, it happens all the time." I said, "Well, not to me." And I'm a veteran. I've been in some scary situations. Boy, I know what scared is, and this was one of them. Anyway, we got talking again, and she was saying how 30 to 40% of the people in the town have cancer and will die of it, because apparently at the base, which is about 13 miles just behind the mountains from this place in the desert, they have little or no, measures taken against contamination from whatever they're doing out there. And of course, it is well known as a secret air base that developed supposedly the stealth fighters there. And of course, the government, we know they're about 10 years ahead of what the general public knows.
We only know about 10% from the news.
From the news, yeah. Having been a journalist for 30 years, we only know about 10% of what's actually going on. And the government, as far as development of aircraft and other technology, is about 10 years ahead of what the public knows. And certain things should be kept secret, but they don't have to chase me up across the bloody desert and scare me to death. Anyway, so to answer a long answer to a short question there, I think we certainly have many examples of radiation poisoning, possibly cancer, other physical evidence of UFO contact in a very malign form, such as disease. Okay, here's another alien. Everybody's interested in aliens today. This is from Lynn Ferretti in Paramus, New Jersey.
And she writes to us, "Why are aliens doing genetic and medical experiments on us? What can their purpose be?" Well, that's if that's what they're doing, if they're doing anything at all.
Very well put. Go ahead and take it.
Oh, that was it.
Okay. Ben is a man of few words, but they're all worth listening to. Okay. I think that's certainly true, if that's what's happening. There are many ways to explain, I suppose, these phenomena of alien abductions. I think people like Dr. John Mack, matter of fact, he came up on the show last night, but we didn't have a chance to say who he was on CBS.
He did?
John Mack. Yeah, he was mentioned, I believe, by Paul Dever.
Oh.
Yeah. John Mack was a Harvard University professor who was a professor of psychology and set out to prove that alien abduction phenomena were some sort of birth memories or whatever, and he came to the conclusion that they actually were legitimate. And he got himself in all kinds of hot water at Harvard. Fortunately, he had his tenure, which means they couldn't just flame him, But he died mysteriously in a traffic accident, which is pretty suspicious to me. Several
Harvard
years later.
set it up.
Well, no, if Harvard said it, you can't say that on the.
I know.
Sorry, Harvard. Anyway,
it was a joke.
Yeah.
Just kidding. JK.
Anyway, there are all sorts of fluky things that go on, but there are many very credible people who believe in alien abductions, and of course, among them being our friend Bud Hopkins from New York City, who is probably one of the leading people who has researched that and has documented it through hypnotism, etc. Now, of course, first of all, I have my doubts about hypnotism. Because what they always do with these people, or at least usually, is put them under and they'll get the story that way. And, I don't know.
It's very suggestible.
I think so. Yeah, it depends on who the interviewer is and what questions are asked. Because when I started out in the 1970s in paranormal research, hypnotism was starting to fall out of favor. And then all of a sudden in the mid and late 80s, it came back again, and now it's kind of still considered to be a legitimate tool. Maybe it is. I don't know. But assuming that it's legitimate, the things that are said under hypnosis when it comes to alien abductions are extremely consistent, not only from person to person, but from culture to culture. Now, you go to India, and you put people under and ask them about these alien abductions. The stories are very similar. The Greys, who, of course, correspond to the gnomes of the past folklore. You wonder if some of these critters haven't got the same origins. We just look at them in different ways in different ages.
Garden
but
gnomes.
But these people or whoever they are seem to be garden gnomes with little red hats seem to be part of the human experience from the beginning. And what they mean or what they are, I don't know. So medical experiments, well, yeah, seemingly. One theory is that they are our descendants and have come back through time and have messed up their own species and are trying to recover DNA from us to straighten things out. Other people who tend to be more socially conscious think that they messed us up in our origins, time of origins, and there is some evidence that something went on between 600,000 and 10,000 years ago that was pretty fluky. And they seem to think, well, they have a program to sort of try and fix us or do something to make things better for us. The question is, nobody knows. And if these are medical experiments, who knows? I will tell you this, and I probably shouldn't, but I did work in some military intelligence when I was in the military, and obviously there was a certain rumor mill that does go on in that realm, and I guess I'm too old to worry about it now. But in the late 60s, early 70s, they came to the conclusion that you can't keep really secrets. Everybody blabs everything. You talk to guys from World War II, they still shut up about everything. But that all changed in the 60s and 70s. So they figured, well, the best way to keep secrets is to give out inaccurate information from accurate sources and accurate information from inaccurate sources. You get some fruitcake, and you get them to tell the truth, and nobody's going to believe them. Right? You just keep everybody guessing, and it really is very effective. But one does hear a certain amount of gossip, at least 30 years ago in my day. And one of the things I heard was about cattle mutilation. I heard very little about UFOs, actually. But one thing I did hear was about the whole cattle mutilation phenomenon, which is blamed on UFOs. And this is when farmers, especially out in cattle country in the West, will find their cows dead in the morning or surgically dismembered in very, very sophisticated ways that some rustler's not going to do or some animal isn't going to produce. And sometimes this is blamed very often on UFOs. Well, what I heard through the grapevine was that, well, hey, buddy, in the Midwest, or I should say the Southwest, that's where all the nuclear testing was done, unbridled nuclear testing for a while, before we realized how dangerous it was, and that the fallout is carried on the winds. And they were telling us in the 1960s, kids, don't eat the snow because it's radioactive. So what happened was that they supposedly are going out and testing these cows, which is where our meat supply comes from, to see just how bad things are as far as the contamination is concerned. That's what I heard. Whether it's true, I have no idea, but it sure sounds more, logical to me than aliens coming down and stealing cow lips.
That's why I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah, very wise. Okay, we still got a few minutes here, so we got a very long one from Ottawa, Ontario, which we'll get to in a longer show. Okay, here's another. Boy, everybody's interested in UFOs tonight. Okay, here's one from Ginny M. in Cumberland, right in our local listening area.
And she writes, I've heard all kinds of reasons why the government doesn't want us to know the truth about UFOs. What's the real reason?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know. But we do ask our guests who probably know more than we do about UFOs, like Stan Friedman or Bill Burns. And especially Bill will say that they probably don't know any more than we do about it. I personally don't believe that. I'll tell you what I think. What the heck? I'm too old to worry about. What I think is happening is that, and I've received some evidence toward this in threats that we receive because of this show and because of things I've written. And again, there are things that should be kept secret, but I don't think everything should be. One thing I think that's happening is that the government realizes that we've been conditioned to, once we've gotten used to the Klingons and the Planet of the Apes people in our culture, I don't think that it's so scary to think that there are aliens on planets far away, okay? Or even that they're visiting us once in a while. But I think what's really scary is that if they realize or have discovered somehow that this idea of multiple worlds is true, and that these enemies, some of them anyway, aren't far away, a couple of zillion light years, they're right next to us all the time and sometimes can reach across what physicists call the membranes into our world. I think that's scary as anything. I can't think of anything scarier than that. And I think that rather than worry about alien life disrupting society or people forgetting about any sort of order in society because of people on other planets, I don't think that's what they're worried about. I think that's what they're worried about. What they're worried about is people realizing that, if I'm right, that these other worlds are there and that we are in some ways at the mercy of some of the things, and there's nothing we can do about it. I don't believe there's nothing we can do about it, but I think that's what they might think. And I think that there have been experiments done in reference to using other worlds. I mean, science physicists have talked about it. And I think that's really, to answer your question, Ginny, what they might really be afraid of. Okay, so I hope I'm wrong about that. He's been right all the time. Isn't that what they I don't know. Well,
yeah.
I shouldn't say that because I'm not always right all the time. Hopefully not about this.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to, I guess, wrap up our emails here. We do invite you to write to us anytime at behindtheparanormal.com or here at the station, Eno at onworldwide.com. Eno is just one spelled backwards, E-N-O. And I think you might enjoy our website, behindtheparanormal.com. We have everything about guests, future guests, past guests, stuff we're doing. And, of course, over almost 200 podcasts of past shows on good old ON here or CBS or Achieve Radio on a South Dakota station. We're pretty busy guys. So anyway, I want to thank our producer. What's your name again? Good old Craig Pelletier. And we'll see you next week, Monday, June 21st, right here on WOON, 1240 a.m. and ONWorldwide.com, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific, drive time. Our guest will be director and producer Peter J. Barkley. Director and producer, he's not a director, he's just director. No, he's not that either. Anyway, somebody, I got to get a hold of whoever writes these scripts. Peter J. Barkley of the Paranormal League of America, a group that claims it's trying to break out of the cheesy ghost hunting mold with its new internet TV show. Now, I must say, we don't usually have guests from garden variety ghost hunting groups because we don't take them too seriously. However, this guy kind of struck me. I didn't consult you on this, Ben. I apologize. But this guy kind of struck me as being really, really out to change things. So I kind of respect it.
All right, we'll give him a shot.
We'll give him a shot. See what happens.
On our regular Sunday show, June 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific, on CBS Radio and www.newskyradio.com, it will be our 3-hour return of the Rendlesham 2, the second in our historic special, marking the 30th anniversary of the Bentwater/Woodbridge Air Base UFO incidents of 1980. Witnesses on our panel will include former Air Force personnel Larry Warren, Jim Peniston, and John Burroughs, and we'll have UFO experts Nick Pope, Peter Robbins, and Bill Burns. Check out our show website at www.behindtheparanormal.com. and your local radio schedules for the cities where CBS carries the show and the websites where you can hear us from anywhere. And remember, you can always get our free podcasts, as my dad said, of all our shows, along with show schedules and guest information at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And that's it for this week, folks. Have a safe trip home. See you next week.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.